because today we're taking a deep dive into a story that's got it all. International intrigue, potential legal battles, and of course, at the center of it all, Meghan Markle.
What I find really interesting about this whole thing is how a simple logo for Meghan's new lifestyle brand, as ever, has managed to cause so much controversy.
It's wild, right? We've got articles here saying everything from accusations of plagiarism to concerns about cultural sensitivity, and even maybe a potential trademark battle. It's like this logo launch has become a total PR nightmare.
It really does make you wonder, how did this even happen? Did someone just totally miss something, or is there more to it? I guess let's start with the logo itself. A black and white palm tree with 2 hummingbirds. Seems pretty harmless at first glance, right?
Well, yeah, until you see the coat of arms for Pereras, which is a town in Spain. It's got a colorful palm tree on it for sure, but it also has these 2 birds flying towards it. And I gotta say, the resemblance between the two is just uncanny. It's hard to believe that no one on Meghan's team caught this.
Well, the mayor of Pereras definitely noticed. Skamora actually called it a comedy of errors. And get this, she's even thinking about taking legal action. Can you imagine? You're the mayor of this small town, and all of a sudden, your centuries-old coat of arms is being used to sell lifestyle products.
I can only imagine how frustrating that must be. This emblem isn't just some random design to them. It represents their history, their identity. It's like someone taking your family heirloom and trying to make money off it.
Exactly, and it goes beyond just the legal issues. There's a deeper ethical question here about using cultural symbols for commercial gain. Can you really just put a price tag on something that means so much to a community?
It really makes you wonder, what were they thinking? I mean, the palm tree and hummingbirds obviously mean something to Meghan personally, right? The whole California connection. Plus, I read somewhere that they actually did do global trademark searches.
That's actually where things start to get even more interesting. It's totally possible that they were only looking for registered trademarks and completely missed the cultural significance of Pereras' coat of arms. Or maybe, and this is just me thinking out loud, they saw the resemblance but decided to go ahead with it anyway.
Which brings us to branding expert Doug Eldridge, who, let's just say he didn't hold back at all. He called it an unforced error, and even compared the whole situation to that scene from The Office where Pam has to spot the difference between 2 pictures that are exactly the same.
Ouch. Yeah, that's gonna hurt. But he does kind of have a point. You'd think that with all the resources that Meghan has at her disposal, someone would have done a simple image search and flagged this potential problem.
Yeah, but is it possible that they were so focused on what the logo meant to them personally that they just completely missed the bigger picture? Hummingbirds seem to be pretty important to both Meghan and Harry, especially since the Queen died. Remember how he wrote about them in Spare?
You're right, hummingbirds do have a special meaning for them. And that actually makes this whole thing even more confusing. If they put so much thought into the logo with all this personal meaning behind it, how could they miss such an obvious resemblance?
Yeah, it's like they had blinders on or something. So with all this backlash, what are the royal experts saying about it all?
Well, Richard Fitzwilliams, who's always got something interesting to say, called the whole situation hilarious, but also potentially damaging to Meghan and her team's reputation. His take is that they should have known better.
Interesting. But it seems like not everyone is being so critical. Broadcaster Helena Chard said that she gets the resemblance, but she also pointed out that using palm trees and birds in design is pretty common. She even questioned if the people involved should have been expected to see this coming.
I think Chard brings up a good point. It's true that some images are used all the time. However, the level of detail and the way the elements are arranged in both logos do make it seem like there are some legitimate concerns.
Okay, so we've got this logo that looks a whole lot like a coat of arms that's been around for centuries. But wait, there's more.
This is where it gets really interesting.
Turns out there's another as ever out there. A clothing line in New York that's been using that name since 2017. Talk about bad timing. That's way before Meghan even trademarked hers.
Right, and the owner of that clothing line, Mark Kolsky, is not backing down at all. He's already put out a statement saying that he knows what's going on, but refuses to change the name, pointing out that he was using it first and that his customers have been really supportive.
Wow, so now on top of the logo controversy, Meghan might have a trademark battle on her hands. This launch is turning into a complete disaster.
It really seems that way. And this new development brings up some really interesting legal questions. Kolsky might actually have what are called common law rights to the name because he's been using it for so long, even without a registered trademark. It basically means he might have legal protection just by using the name consistently, even if he didn't officially register it.
Wait, hold on. Didn't Meghan say in her announcement video that she had secured the name As Ever back in 2022?
Yeah, she did. But remember, at first, she was going with American Riviera, which was a nod to her California roots. It seems like she switched to As Ever later on in the process.
Which makes Kulski using the name even more of a problem for her. He's even gone so far as to say that he's exploring all possibilities and pointed out that he's just a small business compared to the power and money of Netflix behind Meghan's venture.
That whole David versus Goliath thing adds another layer of intrigue to all of this, for sure. It'll be really interesting to see if Kulski actually takes legal action and how Meghan's team responds to that.
Speaking of responses, it looks like they're trying to downplay the connection to Kulski's clothing line by emphasizing that As Ever is a lifestyle brand, not just about clothing.
That's actually a smart move to try and set themselves apart. They're essentially saying we're in different categories, so there's no real conflict here.
Right. And they're really leaning hard on the connection to Meghan's old lifestyle blog, The Tig, talking about cooking and crafting and gardening and all that stuff. It's almost like they're trying to bring back the magic of The Tig, but with a Duchess twist.
That's pretty clever, actually. They're trying to tap into that existing fan base and create a sense of familiarity. But will it be enough to overcome all these problems they're facing?
That's the big question, isn't it? We've got a logo that's causing international uproar, a possible legal battle, and a brand that's kind of teetering on the edge. So let's put on our detective hats and try to figure out what went wrong here and what this means for Meghan moving forward.
Definitely. Let's dig a little deeper into what the fallout from these mistakes might be and explore whether Meghan can actually turn this whole thing around.
Okay, so I think we can all agree that Meghan's team definitely has their work cut out for them with this As Ever launch. But can they actually save it?
Well, it really depends on what their strategy is and how they handle all these different crises they're facing. Remember Doug Eldridge? He has some pretty strong opinions about their chances.
Oh yeah, he didn't hold back, did he?
Not at all. He basically said this whole thing could really hurt the brand's image and make it a lot harder for Meghan to gain any traction.
Yeah, and he even used that analogy about an ant under a magnifying glass.
Yeah, a bit dramatic maybe, but I get what he's saying.
I do too. It paints a pretty clear picture. Basically, Meghan is always under a microscope, and this is just another example of her making mistakes that end up hurting her brand.
Yeah, it does feel like everything she does gets analyzed and criticized, but she does have a huge following and a pretty powerful platform. She's bounced back from tough situations before.
That's true. She's definitely proven she's a force to be reckoned with. But this just feels different somehow, doesn't it? It's not just bad press. She's got potential legal problems now, too, with both the coat of arms and the name issue. And let's be real, sometimes public opinion can be way worse than any legal battle.
Yeah.
So how does she win this one? Should she just address the controversy head-on or try to move past it quietly?
That is the million-dollar question. Both approaches have their pros and cons.
I know, right? It's a tough call.
Addressing it directly could show that she's taking responsibility, but it could also make the negative attention even worse. Ignoring it might make it fade away, but it could also make her seem out of touch or like she doesn't care.
It's a real balancing act. But let's take a step back for a minute and think about the bigger picture. This whole As Ever saga is about more than just one brand or one person. What does this tell us about the power of branding and how important it is to do your research in today's world?
It definitely highlights how, in this age of social media, even the smallest slip-up can have huge consequences. Especially for someone like Meghan, who's constantly in the spotlight. Every single decision, every little detail can get blown out of proportion.
And it also shows how crucial it is to do your homework, not just for legal reasons, but for ethical ones too.
Yeah.
Think about the mayor of Polaris and the people of that town. Their coat of arms isn't just some design. It's a symbol of their history, their identity. This isn't just business to them, it's personal.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder, whose responsibility is it to make sure brands are culturally sensitive? Is it the individual, the company, or society as a whole?
That's a tough one. I don't think there's an easy answer. But what this situation does show us is that we can't just ignore these issues. We need to be talking about the impact of our choices on others, openly and honestly.
Absolutely. We need to stop just reacting to scandals and start thinking ahead about what our actions mean ethically, especially when it comes to things like branding and marketing.
So where does that leave Meghan and As Ever? Can she recover from these early mistakes and actually build a brand that connects with people? Or will this whole thing end up being a cautionary tale?
I guess only time will tell. But one thing's for sure, this is far from over. It'll be interesting to see what decisions she makes and how the public reacts.
Well, we've covered a lot today looking at the as-ever controversy from all sides. We've talked about the legal stuff, the ethical questions, and what this all means for branding in our digital world.
We've heard from experts who think she really messed up and others who have a more balanced perspective.
But I think the big question remains, can Meghan Markle actually turn this thing around? Can she learn from this and create a brand that truly reflects her values and connects with her audience?
And that's the question we'll leave you with today. Think about everything you've heard and the potential long-term effects on As Ever, and decide for yourself if you think Meghan can actually overcome all of these early challenges.
Wow, we've really spent this deep dive going through all the ups and downs of Meghan Markle's As Ever launch. It's been quite the journey.
It really has. We've gone from comparing logos to talking about potential lawsuits and even discussing the whole idea of ethical branding in today's world.
And throughout all of it, one question keeps popping up in my mind. Did Meghan and her team just make a bunch of careless mistakes, or is there something bigger going on here? Like, is there a pattern of them missing important details?
Yeah, that's what we've been trying to figure out, right? On the one hand, you've got the logo thing, which you could maybe say was just an oversight. A pretty big one, but still. But then you add in the potential trademark problem with that other As Ever clothing line, and it starts to feel like maybe there's more to it.
It really makes you wonder how they could have missed something like that, especially with all the resources and legal experts that someone like Meghan Markle has.
It is kind of baffling. You have to wonder how thorough they were before launching this whole thing. Did they rush it? Were they so focused on creating a specific image that they forgot to do their due diligence?
And if that's the case, what does that say about how they're approaching this whole brand building thing? Are they cutting corners? Or are they just totally clueless about the potential risks?
That's what makes this whole situation so interesting and honestly a bit worrying, because it makes you think about bigger issues like accountability and responsibility. Not just in the world of celebrities and branding, but in anything where image and perception are really important.
You're absolutely right. It's easy to get caught up in all the drama, but there are some important lessons here for all of us. It reminds us that in a world where everything's connected, everything you do has consequences. And those consequences can be even bigger when you're in the public eye.
Exactly. Whether you're launching a brand, starting a company, or even just living your life online, the choices you make matter. And the more people know who you are, the more those choices are going to be examined.
So as we wrap up our deep dive, I'm left feeling a bit uneasy. It's like we've just scratched the surface of this whole story.
I agree. It's about way more than just a logo or a name. It's about how tough it is to build a brand in a world that's getting more and more complex and unforgiving.
It's about honesty, transparency, and really understanding how our actions affect others.
And ultimately, it's about the decisions we make and what we tell ourselves about who we are and what we believe in.
We might never know the whole truth about what happened with the As Ever launch, but I think there are some valuable lessons we can take away from it. Thanks for joining us on this journey.
Absolutely.
We'll be back soon with another deep dive, exploring a new topic and breaking it all down for you. See you then.